Okay, everyone, we have come to 7 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is James Folks Comnenellis. I will be helping facilitate us through our different presentations this evening. I am the coordinator for the Office of Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs for the Archdiocese of St. Louis. And as part of that role, I've also begun work for and with the diocese on care for the earth, care for our common home. But before we get into the sort of details of our presentation, I want to just take a few minutes of silence together. These times are difficult right now with the pandemic, with many other things that are going on in our nation, with fires, and there are many struggles for many communities right now. So I think we're going to take just about 10 seconds to just sit quietly and think about where we're at. Okay, so one last bit of welcome. Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky, who is the newly instated Archbishop of St. Louis, was not able to join us this evening. However, he did pre-record a welcome for us, which we are going to watch now, and then we will get into the discussion with our panelists.
My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, God has given us an opportunity today to unite as people of goodwill in advocating for the care of our common home. We gather to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Pope Francis' groundbreaking encyclical Laudato Si, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of life. We all share this world, no matter our faith or philosophy. And we all have a moral obligation to take responsibility for its care. In our region, the gift of creation is flowing before us. From the Mississippi to the Missouri River, the many parks and conservation areas enrich our lives and our landscapes. Pope Francis reminds us that creation is groaning. The voice of the earth is admonishing us to remember that we are part of an interconnected web of life. We are not its masters. The vulnerable communities in our midst have experienced the worst effects of crisis, like the climate change and the current pandemic. Care for our common home is an issue of justice and mercy for those on the margins. Care for our common home is care for our neighbor. As neighbors, we will, in the words of Pope Francis, seek to find just and sustainable ways of living that can give the earth the rest it requires. With Pope Francis, we also rejoice that faith communities are coming together to create a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world, and that the season of creation is becoming a truly ecumenical initiative. May God bless you all in this work and in everything you do in His name.
So we're going to get started. Tonight we'll be hearing from 6 different speakers who are going to be addressing care for our common home from a number of different perspectives. So our first presentation will be by Dr. Benjamin DeFoy. He is an atmospheric scientist whose research focuses on computer simulation of air pollution. After a PhD in engineering from Cambridge University, he worked with Dr. Mario Molina at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology on a project to improve the air quality in Mexico City. He now researches air pollution in places ranging from East St. Louis to Tibet and teaches classes on climate change at St. Louis University. He has also presented at some of our local St. Louis parishes on these topics. Dr. DeFoy, thank you, and take it away.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here tonight for the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si. So it turns out Laudato Si was a song that I used to sing growing up. It's an Italian song of St. Francis's canticle. One of the good things that's happened in 5 years is there are much better versions of the song available online than there used to be before. So look it up and send it to your choir director. I mention this because the other song that we sing, that you probably all know, is attributed to St. Francis, is Make Me a Channel of Your Peace. And hopefully we'll sing that on Sunday, will be St. Francis of Assisi's feast day. The key line that concerns us tonight is, let me not seek as much to be understood as to understand. And I think that's really what Pope Francis sought to do in the encyclical Laudato Si, to seek to understand. So he sought out the best scientific advice possible as a starting point for the encyclical, and to talk about the gospel of creation, of where we stand on environmental issues. And in order to do that, we need to be able to see clearly. So here that brings us to the words of the prophet Isaiah in the Song of the Servant. Hear, you deaf, and look, you blind, that you may see, and see how beautiful the earth is. Before the space age, nobody had seen this view of the earth ever. And now it's so common we don't even pay attention to it. But notice how beautiful it is. But also ask yourself, what do I see in this photograph? You'll see land, you'll see oceans, you'll see clouds, the blue planet. Hopefully you'll see that we're over Africa, that Europe is hiding behind the clouds. You'll see mid-latitude storms moving from west to east that give us the temperate forests. You see the intertropical convergence zone that gives rain to the rainforests. You don't see the subsiding air over the deserts, but you can infer its presence. Can you see what time it is in St. Louis, or what day of the year it is? All these things you could figure out from this photograph once you start to pay more attention to what's going on. And so I think that's really the specialty of science, is to see more and to go and see things that even are not visible. So here we have the Keeling curve, named after Dr. Chuck Keeling, who managed to convince NOAA to fund him to measure carbon dioxide concentrations in 1957 for the International Geophysical Year. People thought he was a little crazy, but then they thought, maybe it's best to keep him occupied over there in Hawaii, the top of this volcano. And through his extraordinary efforts, he was able to keep this measurement going. It's still going now after his death. And what do you see in this curve of carbon dioxide concentration since 1957? You see these little wiggles going up, going down, going up, going down with the seasons. And this is the signature of the Earth breathing, these forests of the northern hemisphere, putting out oxygen in the spring, and then putting out more carbon dioxide in the fall, back and forth, breathing closely. And if you think about this, all this oxygen that you get to breathe, when was the last time that you got up in the morning and said thank you for your first breath of oxygen? Maybe something to make a note of for tomorrow morning. The other thing you see, though, is you see this big increase. We're now 50%, the CO2 concentration is 50% higher than at pre-industrial levels. Very clear. And if we do take other measurements, if we look at isotopes, carbon-14, then we know where that carbon dioxide is from. It's fossil fuels that we have been putting into the atmosphere. So all these things we see from measurements, specialized measurements. I just need to move here. Well, okay, sorry. You can also see that there are small changes. Some years it increases a bit more, some years it increases a bit less. Things vary. And what we'd like to know is what the context is for that. How does it vary in the long run? And so there's a problem. How do we measure carbon dioxide from yesterday? It's gone. Fortunately, the Earth has kept a record of it here in Antarctica. Each time it snows, there's a little bit of snow in Antarctica, it traps little bubbles of air that get made into ice. And so you have this thick layer, 2 miles of ice that preserve the atmospheres of time long past. So you send out some hardy scientists here with some drilling equipment. They bring up an ice core and take it back to the lab and extract these tiny bubbles of air from the ice and then measure the concentration. And here you have an 800,000 year record of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And what do you see? You see it going up and down, up and down. In this case, it's the coming and the going of the ice ages, varying between about 170 parts per million to 270 parts per million. And that difference is the difference between having 2 miles of ice over the upper Midwest and no ice at all, what we have now. You also see that we are totally outside the operating range of the Earth. If you think about this with relation to your personal body temperature, our body temperature is always varying on lots of different timescales. And that's good. That's a sign that we're alive, that we're functioning well. But if your body temperature does this, then you don't pretend, hopefully, that there's nothing. You, well, put yourself in isolation for one. So this is what we see when we kind of look at the climate. And I'd like to ask you where you want to live. We can't do this by a show of hands, unfortunately, but Venus has been in the press recently. We've discovered some phosphine on it. It could be a sign of life. It's pretty toxic. I wouldn't recommend it. It had a runaway greenhouse effect. All the oceans evaporated. So bad place to be. Mars, I usually, when I teach, have some intrepid students who want to go live on Mars. Too small, not enough atmosphere. We've recently discovered some hidden lakes there, salt lakes, not ideal for a lake house. So look at the Earth there in the middle and think back to this, the beauty of creation that is so present in Laudato Si. And think about, there's plenty of disagreement in climate science about the fine details, about working out, piecing together this extraordinary system. But there is fundamental agreement on all the basics. And one of the fundamental agreement is if you take a system that has been varying like this over the years and you make a major change to it, then clearly there are going to be some impacts. And this is what we've seen. Hey, this is the instrumental temperature record of the Earth. For about 170 years now, we have pretty accurate measurements of global average temperature. And you see in the early years, the global average temperature was varying up and down, up and down. This is what the atmosphere does. It's alive. And we never really know exactly what's going to happen, but we're grateful that it stays within that range. And since about the Second World War, we have seen a big increase in temperature. 1 degree Celsius, about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And same thing, there are years where it's a little warmer, years that are a little cooler, but the message is extremely clear. If you see this in your own body chart and you say that everything's fine, then you're in denial, I'm afraid to say. 2020, the data's not in yet, but we expect that 2020 will in fact be the hottest year on record. That will be 2016. So we could keep going on and on like this with lots and lots and lots of graphs taken by lots and lots of fancy different measurement equipment. This is the sea level. We know the sea level is rising because of continental ice that is melting, but also mostly because the oceans are getting warmer. And as the water gets warmer, it expands. And that's exactly what we see. So we have a congruence between theory and predictions that have been made for over 100 years now of climate science, and between computer simulations, trying to figure out how all that theory fits together, and observations. In this case, observations on the ground by tide gauge data, and observations from space, satellites measuring the sea level continuously. And we see that the sea level has been rising, very clear signal. So once we see all of that, oh, and one thing also I think to highlight, we have all these specialized things from science, but also there are things you can see just directly. And I think some people have traveled, for example, to Alaska and seen the changes in the ice in the glaciers. A very clear signal there. You see a photo from before, you see a photo now, and you say, okay, now I know that this is happening. And this really was the lesson of the prophets. Here we have Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel wagging their finger at us and telling, we told you so. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. They want us to pay attention, and this is a key message in the Bible that is in agreement with a key message from science. Pay attention to what is happening. I'll go back to Laudato Si, once we pay attention, we discover all these amazing things about the climate that keeps us alive. We see how beautiful the earth is, and then we see how everything is connected. And we heard this very clearly from Archbishop Rosansky's introduction. It's a key theme in Laudato Si. Everything is connected. Hopefully you did some of these diagrams when you were in grade school of the food web and how it all kind of links around and things. The first law of ecology is that everything is related to everything. And it would be foolish if any one organism in this diagram said, hey, I don't need the rest of creation. I can live alone. And yet somehow that seems to be what sometimes we do ourselves. The Pope takes us to a higher level of interconnectedness by looking at integral ecology and looking how human systems sort of connect in with nature, with science, but also at the level of culture, family, society. All these things are connected, and one thing informs the other. One thing to note then in this is that science is not there to tell us what to do. Science is there to inform us. It's there to sort of give us a diagnostic. It's there to help us then figure out for ourselves what we can do. I think one thing I didn't put in politics in here, but one thing that Pope Francis actually says very clearly in the encyclical in Laudato Si is what an elevated view of politics he has. Politics is the art of getting along together. This was one of my favorite cartoons from the pandemic. Obviously, it's self-serving for a scientist. You know, we have scientists at work here doing all the hard work of trying to figure out solutions, and the politicians in this kind of world of make-believe. This is not what Pope Francis's view of politics is. In fact, in Laudato Si, he's very clear. Politics is a noble activity. We should revalue it, practice it with vocation and a dedication. Because as we pay attention, as we see that things are connected, we see that, in fact, there are real problems that need to be addressed. Even if we disagree on all sorts of things, on policies, on the role of government, subsidiarity, regulations, as Christians, it's important that we feel the pain of things that have gone wrong. Lots of extinctions here. We're in the midst of a sixth mass extinction through our own fault, in a sense. And you'll remember then what the first job for humans was. God gave Adam a very first job. Before work even became a curse, God said, Adam, you will name the animals. And that was the work of a scientist right there. And it was, you know, a blessing. The work of a poet too, before there was this sharp divide between them. And the job is not finished. We are still discovering all sorts of new things on Earth that we are still naming. But even as we continue, we're wiping out entire species from the face of the Earth. And that's something, whatever we think, we need to be mindful of that and to mourn for it. It's not just the biosphere that we're hurting, we are harming people too. This is a computer simulation of a hurricane that was done a year before Hurricane Harvey struck Texas. One of the leading hurricane scientists in the US trying to figure out, well, what is climate change going to do for hurricanes? So he puts in this fancy model for the end of the century, I think maybe 2085 or something, and he finds this hurricane that starts as a storm of the Bahamas. It crosses over Florida. And then it rapidly intensifies as it goes over warm water and moves slowly. And that's exactly what we had with Hurricane Harvey. So that's pretty freaky. And the paper said this could happen in 50 to 100 years. It happened 7 months later, you know. So that's what was said for the California fires. The future is now. This August was not so much the warmest August of the last 100 years, but potentially the coolest August of the next 100 years. And we know that we depend on the Earth for our survival. We know that climate is changing, all sorts of things. We know we've been getting these droughts, heat waves, forest fires, floods, hurricanes, all sorts of things. And we know that we are vulnerable to it. And certainly the Pope in Laudato Si wants to make us be mindful of that, and especially that some people are much more vulnerable to it than others. And that's something to mourn and to be mindful of. So people of goodwill, the writing is on the wall, but it's not all doom and gloom from you know, the climate science stage here. I was a child when St. John Paul II you know, went to went to Poland at the time of great fear, and he said, "Be not afraid." Clear message here, be not afraid. And I think Pope Francis also reminds us very clearly, God always forgives. I do want to highlight the continuity of the message here. Just one slide to show there's been a lot of continuity in the speeches of the Pope on the environment, Pope John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Francis now, lots of continuity in the biblical message. And there's many ways to respond to this message. And sometimes we want to just kind of be like in the epistle of in the letter to the Corinthians, you know, I am of Paul, I am of Cephas, I am of Apollo. We need to be able to juggle all these things together. Hopefully you've read this book, you've read it to your children, you've read it to your grandchildren, The Clown of God, God's Juggler, which was also a name of Francis of Assisi. In Laudato Si, the Pope talks about three types of relationship, the relationships to the earth, to our neighbor, and to God. And keeping all these in the air at once is, in fact, a tricky act of juggling. I'm a terrible juggler, so I won't even try it on Zoom. But do it as a pandemic project. And I think I'd like to propose that we can kind of use that as a model, three types of different actions for climate, for the environment, for caring for our common home. Personal actions, societal actions, and then our hopes and our dreams. And then sometimes we get stuck in these little debates about, oh no, this one, no, it's that one, no, it's the other. Well, try and do something, try and tick off something in each of the boxes. Not everything, not all the time, but something. We're going to hear later about plenty of great examples of people doing personal actions to reduce climate change, so I won't use up their time on that, on personal actions. Plenty of things to do with societal actions. I just want to highlight now the Missouri Interfaith Power and Light that works with congregations to reduce their emission footprints. The Catholic Climate Covenant has lots of very valuable resources. And again, things that we can do for multiple reasons. Everybody can find something that they want to do, and they can do it, you know, maybe because they want to feel healthier, maybe because they care about the environment, maybe because they want to save some money. Lots of reasons, lots of things to do. Just pick something and go do it. But I also want to remind people not to neglect that third dimension, the hopes and the dreams. I think Pope Francis here has a couple of suggestions that maybe people would dismiss and say, oh, that's a little trite, especially if we haven't done them. Hey, most cultures say something at the start of a meal together. It's actually a big failing of the English language. But Pope Francis urges us to say grace before dinner. And if you've been rushing through the same prayer your whole life, then maybe you could look for some new ones, especially if you have kids. There are lots of ones you can sing, you can expand on this. The Japanese say itadakimasu. Itadakimasu, it means I receive, or I humbly receive. That seems hugely ecumenical. Anybody can do this. But I think what the Pope says in the encyclical, by doing this, it kind of changes the way we look at the gifts we've given, changes our relationship to creation. And it's not to be overlooked. It's something that will change our hearts. The other thing he talks about in the encyclical is the Sabbath. Do we observe a day of rest for the Lord? This does change our life's orientation, how we live our life for the long run. It's not all just technology, it's not all just the government, it's also how we nourish our faith and our hearts. And I think that by doing this, we can, in fact, change the world. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer questions later. And first we'll hear from different members of the community to see what they've done practically to care for our common home.
Thank you, Dr. Defoy. So appreciate that informative presentation. So our next panelist, we are sticking with the theme of education. Our next panelist is Grace Bradley. Grace is a student at St. Joseph's Academy, which is a Catholic high school here in St. Louis. She is currently president of St. Joe's Environmental Club, which is called Earth Angels. Last school year, as vice president, Earth Angels placed second in Missouri Gateway Greening Schools Quest. The Earth Angels Environmental Club at St. Joseph's Academy, their mission is to bring awareness and action to environmental issues, both in the local high school community as well as in the global stage. Thank you, Grace, and take it away.
Hello, thank you. Um, so I've always been very interested in environmentalism and worried about climate change growing up, but it wasn't until I started high school and I joined Earth Angels when I became really involved and started paying attention a lot more and recognizing the urgency to act and to try to prevent this. I'm a very firm believer in our small individual actions, such as switching to sustainable alternatives for energy and just doing little things in our lives and changing, and that I believe that it can make a huge impact. At St. Joe specifically, last year we started composting. We hosted a panel with guest speakers to talk about climate change and how it intersects with racism and classism and a bunch of different issues. And we hosted a jean drive so people could recycle their own denim jeans that would be recycled into home insulation. But with that being said, on the contrary, that I believe that our small individual actions can change the world. I really believe that it is big actions and government regulation that can combat this the most. Climate change is not just plastic straw bans and going vegan and thrifting, although those are important. I think we need to recognize that none of those things are what set California on fire and are making the sea levels rise and all over the coast in the world. And the reason that Phoenix, Arizona is going to be over 100 degrees for more than half the year soon. And I don't think we'd have much time to act. There's this common misconception that I've always believed that climate change is something of the future and that it's 2035 and it's in 2050. But I think it is now and it's time to act now. And we still have time to stop whatever we can and make a huge change, but there's not much time left. My message, I have two messages tonight. One is to other members. This is for the youth, members of the youth my age, college, high school age. Act. Find something in your school or on your college campus or even just in your own community that you want to change and make sustainable and work towards it. Nothing is too small when you're trying to better and protect God's creation and his people. And my final message is for people older than me, older than college students. The youth, we're kind of tired. We're tired of being underestimated and ignored and told that we're too young and that we don't understand, but we're watching our future be stripped away from us. And we're not going to give up, and we just want to be heard and we want to be taken seriously. And we want those who are in powerful positions to start making smart decisions and to keep working towards climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We're going to be moving from sort of the educational environment, and we're going to be moving into sort of a congregational environment next. So our next speaker will be Reverend Roderick Burton of New Northside Missionary Baptist Church. He is a senior pastor there at New Northside in St. Louis. He received a Master of Educational Ministry from Covenant Theological Seminary. He is a mentor and a visiting instructor of applied theology at Covenant Theological Seminary. He is a member of the St. Louis Metropolitan Clergy Coalition, the Ecumenical Leadership Council, the Jennings Clergy Coalition, the Baptist Ministers Union of St. Louis and vicinity, the Pastoral Fellowship of St. Louis, and he is on the cabinet of the Interfaith Partnership of St. Louis. He is also a longtime partner with the Archdiocese. We are happy to be collaborators with him and his congregation. So, Reverend Burton, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Great to be part of this panel and very inspired by what I've heard so far. And so I'm going to just talk with you for a few minutes about what we did as a congregation, how we ended up on this journey about caring for our home. when I became a pastor of the church, the former pastor had passed away. He'd been there for 47 years. And as I thought forward, I thought, well, how could we as a church cut our expenses for future generations? And so we thought about solar panels. And at the time, Ameren had, our local utility, had incentives, and we were able to partner with Straight Up Solar, and we became what at the time I thought was the first African American church in our city, but actually we were the second. We're the first Baptist church. We're the first ones to really talk about it. From the solar panels, we set about a journey of learning more about our climate, learning more about efficiency. We partnered with the Sierra Club in the beginning, did a lot of education. We did some advocacy. We also partnered with the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. We worked together on issues such as Resolution 124, advocating for the city to take a stand that they would have clean energy by 2035. Also, we worked with Green the Church. And so Green the Church is a movement to get churches of color behind this issue of environmentalism, climate change, food justice. And so we hosted a summit last fall at our community center. And so we were able to work with them, and we're continuing to work with them so that other churches of color, who a lot of times are not part of this conversation, will be part of the conversation. And some folks are doing this work, but they just haven't had a language to understand that they were doing environmental justice. The other thing that we've been doing is we have been doing environmental justice work in collaboration with Metropolitan Congregation United and the Franciscan Sisters of Mary. And what they have done is come together and hired a community organizer. And the community organizer has been working with us to bring in other African American churches, churches of color, inform them, educate them, and be part of the work. But what happened was COVID happened. And once COVID happened, then the posture changed toward meeting the actual needs of people who are being affected by this crisis. But also, we were in partnership with Washington University, who had committed to have 2 interns who are going to be working to address keeping record keeping and taking scientific records. You got to have data. And so they were going to be checking the air. They were going to be working a clean air monitor in North St. Louis. They also were going to be working to address the lead problem. So St. Louis has a lead problem worse than Flint. And what it is lead paint is still in many buildings, many apartment buildings, and they were going to work on those issues. Those are environmental justice issues. Furthermore, we have continued to expand our partnership. We're working with the Archdiocese. We are excited to continue to do this work, and it's a lot of collaboration. No one person is going to save this planet by themselves. No one church, no one denomination. We all must work together. Not just the young people, but all people have to work to do their part. And so part of that can just be pragmatically looking the ways that you can say. One of the last things that I want to just share with you is we have worked with the EPA to provide a series of, we've advocated for them to provide a series of webinars, as well as a booklet teaching churches, houses of worship, how can they access government programs to help them with sustainability issues. Because too often, sometimes our government can be very complex. And so we're going to continue to work with them, to ask them, to charge them to continue to provide opportunities for congregations to learn how they can use that which has been put into place and has been supported with our tax dollars. So I'm just kind of excited. You know, we went in very pragmatically, getting solar panels, and now we're all over the place. But we're all over the place with the reason of doing things better to make this world better. And I appreciate what Archbishop Brzezinski said. He said, we all share this world. We all share this world. And so we all have to do our part to make this world a better place and more equitable for others in our practices. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Burton. Again, we're going to be staying in sort of the congregational realm now, moving from a leadership position. Now we're going to talk about what has been done in some of our parishes, our Catholic parishes, at the level of the layperson, like me and several here who don't have advanced degrees and don't have ordination of any kind. So our next speakers are Jamie Hassemeyer and Pam Brown. Jamie and Pam are parishioners at local Catholic congregations, working to make their communities and places of worship align with Pope Francis's teaching in Laudato Si. Jamie Hassemeyer attends Holy Redeemer in Webster Groves, Missouri, and helps organize an annual green or no waste fish fry during the season of Lent. So as we're preparing for the Paschal season, Pam Brown attends St. Cletus in St. Charles, and she sits on the social justice committee for that parish, and they are working to integrate more and more care for creation into their plans as well. So Jamie and Pam, take it away.
Thanks, James. Hi, everyone. We're so happy to be with you tonight. Thank you for being here. I'm Jamie Hassemeyer. I attend Holy Redeemer in Webster Groves. I'm the lucky mom of 4 awesome kids, and I think that's why I have such a strong connection to taking care of the earth. And that's why I've been an environmental advocate for the last 15 years.
Hello, I'm Pam Brown. I'm a parishioner at St. Cletus Parish in St. Charles, and I've been a member of the Peace and Justice Committee for over 10 years now. And our focus of our work is around the Catholic social teachings. And the Catholic social teaching that is my most passionate one is care for creation. Jamie and I have committed, Jamie and I are committed to environmental education and positive actions when it comes to care for the earth. When we started on different places, but we have found each other on this journey. And we would like to share with you how to advocate for the environment at your parishes and at your schools. First step, talk with your pastor and your parish council about making positive changes.
This is setting the stage for success so that future steps can be supported. Reaching out to your pastor just on a regular Sunday or via email, your parish council or your principal, in sharing your why this is so important to you and why you think your community can do better. That is critical right now. Then set meetings, and you can explain it more in person and discuss ideas on how to move forward.
Second step, look for opportunities at your parish and at your school where you could be better stewards of creation.
So new habits require some tools, right? So tool number 1 is planning. Some things need more time and research. When we first arrived at Holy Redeemer, we only recycled paper and aluminum. But after some meetings, some research, and phone calls, we were able to offer single stream recycling to our whole campus. Second tool is education. At the day school, we started a fun program called Waste Free Wednesdays. So as you know, packing lunches for kids can create a lot of trash. In fact, every year, each student creates 67 pounds of trash. So the club thought, what can we do to encourage people to pack a waste-free lunch? So with games and fun posters, we taught the kids taught their peers and their parents how to pack waste-free without a lot of investment in products, things that you have at home, fabric, napkins, small containers. And great news, it's easy on the earth to pack waste-free, and it's easy on the budget. Tool number 3, community. Our green fish fries at Holy Redeemer are an all hands on deck experience. Our Catholic Women's League organizes our fries, and they've been partners from the beginning. Our first year there, we swapped out styrofoam to a compostable container for all of the meals served. And each year we grow a little greener. Our athletic association and that generously invested in new cans to make compost and recycling easier to find. And our green machines, which is the name of our student club, are helped out at each waste station, helping people put their trash in the right place.
At St. Cletus, for dining in functions, we use washable food trays now, and we've swapped out plastic cutlery and we use real silverware. We switched from styrofoam for our takeout, and we now use compostable containers for our fish fries and barbecues.
All right, so tool number 4 is your budget. Everybody loves to talk about this one because sometimes these changes can cost a lot more upfront, but eventually the return on investment is seen after a short time. This also allows parishes, when you're saving money, to pay less to utilities and put more money toward charitable works.
At St. Cletus, we took the opportunity to use energy incentives from Ameren, and the school was able to change out over 1,000 lights for new LED lights. The men's club was kind enough, they installed all of the lights, and the project paid for itself in 1 year.
Tool number 5, positivity. You have to have a positive attitude so you can teach people to change without shaming them. So many folks are willing to learn, and they really do want to do the right thing.
Third step, make a mission statement and a general outline of your plan for the environmental improvements. This helps you to keep your focus and set your goals. Make your plan for maybe like a 3-year or, if necessary, a 5-year plan.
And grow a little each year. Solar panels might not be for you right out of the gates, but that certainly is an aspirational goal. And areas and room to improve can be addressed as you start asking questions when you look around. Where can we cut waste? Where can we schedule, or when can we schedule a community cleanup? And is compost right for our school? There are so many ways to get started and to grow.
Step 4 is really important, and that's the educational part. You need to educate the parish on the Catholic social teaching of caring for your creation. If people know why there's a need for a change, they're more likely to make the change. Good ways to do this is put in bulletin blurbs, parish-wide emails, and educational opportunities. And explain the positive reasons for the change, and keep at it. Keep putting it before the parish.
Throughout Laudato Si, Pope Francis connects the dots between care for the earth and care for our brothers and sisters. One way to connect those dots to our spirituality is invite speakers to share insight and inspiration. Over the last couple of years, we've had Sister Cheryl and Dr. DeFoy come to talk to us.
And in St. Cletus, we've invited meteorologist Mike Roberts to speak to the parish about climate change, and we toured the Republic Recycling Facility in Hazelwood.
This also gives you a chance to use your creativity. In early November of last year, Holy Redeemer hosted its first Pumpkin Smash. It was a really fun event, and we invited families to come and bring their tired and sometimes rotting jack-o'-lanterns to hit the compost. After the kids took an axe to them, or it was a little dangerous at some spots. But we had hot chocolate, we had games and a raffle, and we diverted 1 ton of pumpkin flesh from the landfill, and that pumpkin flesh went on to compost. There are so many ways to keep your community engaged and informed.
And we hope you found some inspiration from some of these ideas tonight. Start small and with easy implementable changes. If you are inspired to make a difference in your parish, Jamie and I would be more than happy to talk with you.
Love, compassion, empathy, and concern for all of our brothers and sisters is how we answer Jesus's call to love one another. Let this love be our legacy.
With all the parishes, grade schools, and high schools in the St. Louis area that could be inspired by Laudato Si, what a change we could make. Each of us has the power to make a change.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Jamie and Pam, and thank you all for your engagement in the questions. We're having some great exchanges in the questions here and some in the chat too. I really appreciate your participation. I just want to remind everyone, these are difficult times. There is tension. Let's try and be charitable to one another. Try and hear one another as we're in conversation this evening. There are many different perspectives, and let's keep our ears open, as Isaiah the prophet told us. Sister Cheryl Kemner is our next presenter. She is part of the leadership team for the Franciscan Sisters of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Kirkwood, Missouri. Their Franciscans for the Earth initiative aims to develop and articulate a transformative vision and call others to live in right relationship with each other and with the earth. Thank you, Sister Cheryl, for joining us, and take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Women religious communities in the St. Louis area who are members of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, LCWR, have varied spiritual gifts and missions. They have varied ministries in which many people meet them as educational professionals, healthcare professionals, social workers, parish team members, and so much more. When one looks at each of these congregations' direction statements or goals or initiatives, one sees common threads: care for the poor, care for creation, and the pursuit of justice. These threads are interconnected, as Pope Francis has said in Laudato Si, quote, "Peace, justice, and the preservation of all creation are three absolutely interconnected themes which cannot be separated and treated individually." Paragraph 70. And also he says, quote, "We have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment so as to hear the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth." Paragraph 49. There is a commonality of practices pursued to achieve these goals of these congregations, namely education, collaboration, advocacy, corporate actions, participation in solidarity with others, impact and socially responsible investing, study and in discussion groups, conducting and participating in ecological workshops and webinars, and prayer services. Their engagement in communal actions include recycling, composting, purchasing of hybrid cars, installing solar panels, LED lighting, energy efficient windows, conducting energy audits of their facilities. Several communities have developed land ethics for their large properties, which guide the way they care for the land and care for the people in an intertwined relationship. All life is enhanced and protected, and the ecosystems are sustained. Several religious communities have part of their properties certified as a wildlife habitat. This one shown is from the School Sisters of the Notre Dame. They have planted pollinator gardens, maintained beehives, nurtured native wildflowers, and have planted more trees. Whoops. I don't know what happened there. They initiated land conservation programs or restoration projects. They have community gardens and community and CSAs, community supported agriculture. This stance of care for creation has led one congregation to create the Loretto Earth Network. Another has a team called the Echo Zeal for Mission. Another, Franciscans for Earth. Another has a Green Care Committee and a Green Corner section in their monthly newsletter. One congregation facilitates a Laudato Si circle. Sisters have joined with others at climate marches, whether in St. Louis, Washington, D.C., or wherever they live. Some have witnessed with the Standing Rock Sioux to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline, or protested the pipeline through their property in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Have collaborated with the STL Moms Initiative for cleanup at the Westlake landfill. Congregations have engaged speakers such as Dr. Ed Byersmith, a Catholic Climate Covenant ambassador, Dr. Ed Spivak from the St. Louis Zoo, are pictured here Father John Deere, who spoke on nonviolence and climate change, our Sister Gail Orcello from the Green Mountain Monastery, which was co-founded by the late Father Thomas Berry. They have collaborated to get Quick Trip stores to recycle up to 95% of their waste in their stores. They have hosted films and documentaries for the public, such as Cooked, Survival by Zip Code, Our Prosperity, Our Seed, The Untold Story. They have given talks on Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on care for our common home. And Jamie mentioned that I gave a talk on the encyclical at Holy Redeemer. At least a dozen religious congregations in the area are members of the Intercommunity Ecological Council, the IEC, here in St. Louis. Its mission is to educate, facilitate, and implement around issues pertaining to Earth. This group has been in existence for more than 15 years. They have conducted workshops on determining your carbon footprint, on food insecurity and food deserts in the St. Louis area. They have engaged with speakers such as Belden Lane and Sister Sharon Zayak from Jubilee Farms. They have hosted prayer services at Cardinal Regali Center during this season of creation. They have participated in the Antona Ebo Conference hosted by the Archdiocese of St. Louis. They have hosted and participated in Awakening the Dreamer symposiums and so much more. I would be remiss if I did not mention many fine programs that are provided at Mercy Center, at La Vista Ecological Learning Center, and at Rockhaven Ecozoic Center. However, during this time of COVID-19, many programs are suspended. In all of these programs, initiatives, and outreach, Laudato Si is a guiding document. It calls us to ecological conversion, which is a recovering of a spirituality of creation, a moving of the mind and the heart to acknowledge all is gift, interconnected, interrelated, a change toward responsibility and virtue, a transition to thinking about the common good, future generations, the poor, other living beings, God's glory, and the environment in all our decisions. Ecological conversion begins at the personal level, moves toward lifestyle changes, and then active responsibility and advocacy in the public sphere. We sisters have come to a deeper awareness of our impact on the world, to a consciousness of the integral connection among all things. As advocates for the earth, we work in solidarity with all creation for a healthy and sustainable lifestyle. We respond to Laudato Si call to greater dialogue and collaboration. It calls us to be grateful, in grateful contemplation of God's world, to appreciate and see the beauty around us. It calls us to hope and joy for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. So we're going to start moving into the Q&A section of our conversation here, so that will begin now, and we will have a formal end of our event at 8:30. So we got 30 minutes about Q&A. We have a number of things in the chat that I'll be drawing from. A number of you also submitted questions before the event itself, so I will be drawing from some of those questions as well. But before we get there, I want to respond to Melissa's question, which is in the answered section of the questions. She asked about follow-up resources for people here following this event. And I'm going to post in the chat right now a link to a Dropbox folder. This is a public Dropbox folder that our panelists have added documents and some parish plans. There is also a plan that I put in there. This is an archdiocesan level plan that was put together by Georgetown University. It's for the Archdiocese of Atlanta. It's a very detailed plan. There's a lot of good resources there that you are welcome to peruse. Jamie did a radio program about her no waste fish fry. There's a link to that in there, so please look through those documents. I will also, in our follow-up email after this, I'll be sending the recording out to you all with a link and email. I will include a link to that Dropbox in case you want to use those resources for later, okay? So for our first question, I'm going to pitch this to Dr. DeFoy. This is our top-rated question. There have been a few like it. What is the relationship between Care for the Earth and international or national agreements or policies? What is that relationship? As a scientist who studies broad changes on the globe, how would you speak to that?
I think the main way of answering that is to talk about the most successful environmental agreement we've ever had, which is the Montreal Protocol of 1986. We had the ozone hole crisis, and once it became clear, once science made this problem visible, all the nations of the earth got together and very rapidly agreed to phase out CFCs. And it takes a while for the earth to heal itself, but it is healing itself. So that has been a very successful agreement. The thing to note about it is, in itself, it probably would not have been that successful. But built into the agreement was a revision mechanism every 2 years. Because what happened is, once we started getting on the road to cleaning the atmosphere up, we realized it was much easier than we thought. And so every 2 years we said, you know what, we can do a lot more. And so overall it became very effective. That, I think, also answers the question about the car mileage program in the US, which has not been revised. And so it led to perverse incentives and to what the speaker says, the question says, is the wrong kind of thing. So a good international agreement we know works. And we also, it serves as an interesting case study of naysayers, that all the strategies that were used at the time to say, we can't do it, it's too expensive, it will bring down society. And we can look back and say, no, actually, we could do it. And it worked out pretty well, and certainly nobody now complains about the Montreal Protocol. So I think all those things have valid lessons for climate change now. There's a lot of things that make sense. It's cheaper to have new renewable energy than some of these old polluting plants. So we're already moving, this is the other thing to note, we are moving in the right direction. The future is a lower carbon future. And so we need to be continuing moving in that direction.
Thank you. Okay, our next question that's been voted up in the Q&A section, I think I'm going to pitch to Reverend Burton. So as someone who has worked with a lot of local communities and different initiatives, what are the biggest opportunities and environmental improvements in the St. Louis area? Where are the open doors for houses of worship, especially since that's your sort of wheelhouse? You're on mute.
Sorry, folks, mute button. One of the things that that our utility Ameren is working to do so that they can more swiftly phase out their coal-fired plant is if they can get more businesses or churches to participate in plans that programs that deal with reducing your my mind's blanking out, everybody. I'm sorry. So let me just tell you, there was a program that was brought to us to where they would change out our light bulbs and give more energy efficiency. That's what I'm looking for. I'm sorry. Hadn't any dinner, so my mind's blanking out. The more efficient that our utility is with the electricity, with doing weatherizations, people doing weatherizations at houses, with using light bulbs that are more energy efficient, the less of a load that there is that the public utility needs to use. So right now, because we're in a modern society, we all expect electricity all the time. And so the utility must provide that. And so right now, they still use coal-fired plants, and they've put a plan out to get to retire those plants. But what we can do, what individuals can do is you can go through your house and you can replace the bulbs that you have with more efficient light bulbs. Very simple thing to do. The more efficiency that houses of worship do, the less of a pull it is on the public utility. That's just a simple thing. And there are programs. You can ask Ameren. Spire has programs. Just recently, we live in St. Louis, and there's a lot of, you need air conditioning. We had 16 air conditioners go out, and boy, did I feel pretty dumb when later on I found out that if we had applied for one of the programs where you got a rebate, there was all types of dollars we left on the table. So they have those for you as an individual homeowner, but they also have those if you need to get a hot water heater. So there's things that can do that can affect your bottom line, but also serve to clean the environment and have less of a load. So these are some of the things that you can do, and we'll get you more information and more resources. We'll forward them straight to James, your office, so that the parishes can take advantage of those things.
Okay. Our next question, I think I'm going to pitch to Sister Cheryl. Sister, the question reads, which Sunday of the year, based on the lectionary, do you think priests and we'll say religious communities can preach on environmental issues?
I would think now during the season of creation from September 1st to October 4th, any of those Sundays could be used to preach on environmental issues. I think anything around the Feast of St. Francis could be used. Now, based on the lectionary, if you look at the Gospels, if you look at any of the stories that the parables that Jesus tells, many of them involve creation. If you look at the Old Testament, if you look at the Psalms, many of them are the praise of God through creation. So I think you could use almost any reading to preach on creation, but for a specific time, I would say the season of creation that we are in right now.
Sister Cheryl, for those of us in the audience who may not be familiar with the season of creation, could you back up a little bit and explain a little bit of that history, what it is, and how long it's been going on? What does that mean for you as a sister here in St. Louis? What do you do for it? Things like that.
Okay. I'm a little shaky on the history of it, although I know it did start with the Orthodox, Patriarch Bartholomew, and then Pope Francis did pick it up. And so in my mind, for Catholics, it has been in the past 3-4 years that we have celebrated the season of creation. As a Franciscan, a follower of St. Francis, it is a perfect opportunity to talk about St. Francis and love of creation. And again, the interconnectedness between the care of the earth and the care of the poor, as St. Francis did. I don't know if this will show, yeah, it's backwards, but there are many, many documents that are put out by different associations like Catholic Climate Covenant, Global Catholic Climate Movement. This one that I have was for liturgical celebrations, specifically Sunday Masses, during this season of creation. And the theme this year is Jubilee Time for the Earth, to let the earth rest, to have a time of jubilee. So there's many things, many documents, many resources that can be found during this time of season of creation. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Next, I'm going to pitch this one to Grace first, and then maybe Jamie and Pam can comment if they have things to add. So this is a question that was submitted before the event. What are some low-hanging fruits, so some easy things that we can do on a family level, on an individual level, as a conscientious high schooler? What can we do that would have some collective impact?
Thank you. My ideas on that would be some individual things you can do is research and educate and just read different sources and look at different perspectives and look at different scientific research, and individual changes you can make are maybe you don't like buy certain things that you might not use all the time, kind of like switching to more minimalism kind of things. Like, will I actually need this, or do I, like, it might end up in the trash, or just, personally I'm vegetarian because of the impact that the meat industry has on carbon emissions. And I like to shop secondhand for clothing, so that's thrift stores and really does try my hardest with that. Family level, I would just say look at the things in your kitchen, your bathrooms, and switch those out. Like maybe get a bar of soap instead of a bottle of soap, or reusable plastic bags. Those are the things for like replacing those, and taking your lunch and using reusable containers. Those are just simple little things that individuals and families everywhere can do.
I'll add one of my own, which came to me recently. I've got 4 little boys at home, and we go through a lot of toothbrushes because they like to gnaw on the toothbrushes. And I found a toothbrush, and I at some point I realized every time I throw away a toothbrush, I'm throwing away a big hunk of plastic. And so I found some toothbrushes that were made of wood, some bamboo toothbrushes that were sustainably grown. And it was like, well, I mean, that's maybe an improvement. I hope it's an improvement. One other thing we did when we put leftovers away in my house, we absolutely hate plastic wrap. It's so frustrating. So one thing we did is we bought these reusable silicone tops that we put on our bowls and things when we put things away. So there's just 2 things at a family level I can say we've done. Jamie or Pam, what do you have?
Yeah, so when you're packing waste-free lunches, you know, we've been sold a bill of goods as a society to like think convenience is greater than everything. So that's why you have to take a step back and analyze what it is you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And like when you're packing waste-free lunches, it's, you know, sure, it's super easy to like grab a bag of Doritos and grab an applesauce packet and, you know, a Uncrustable or whatever, which is like a pre-made PB&J sandwich for all of those out there who don't know what that is. But really, it doesn't take that much effort to buy in bulk, throw a few pretzels in a bag, you know, Velcro it shut, and make that sandwich and wrap it in a bandana. Like I send my kids to school with a wrapped sandwich and a bandana. So You know, it's really creative thinking, and there's a ton of resources online for things like that. And then I would say also getting out of your car, because we're trying to reduce the amount of carbon we're emitting because it's a bad greenhouse gas. So getting out of your car, walking when you can, or if you don't live in a neighborhood where it's walkable, or you can't run your errands that way, or on a bike, then definitely plotting your trips out to try to be as efficient as possible.
You're on mute, Pam.
Just want to add a couple things. One, I actually learned from an high school girl when she gave a talk. One thing is we're so happy to put things in our Amazon baskets. And she said, put it in, but don't order it for a week. Think about it. And you'd be surprised how many things don't get ordered because you really don't need them. Another thing that's kind of funny, when I shop at Deerberg's, they know that I try to be environmentally friendly, and before COVID, I always brought my own bags. And when I would go through, the checker would look at me and she'd look at the bagger and she'd say, she has her own bags. He wouldn't even ask, do you want plastic or paper? Now they look at me and they turn to the guy and they say, she'll take paper. You know, I won't take the plastic. So I do that. And I just try and use things that are reusable. I bought silicone bags to put snacks in, or fruit, cut up fruit and stuff, and they're reusable instead of the plastic throwaways. So just a couple of things.
Okay, our next question that we're pulling out of the Q&A box, I'm gonna pitch to Dr. DeFoy. You can, if it's not something you feel you can answer, feel free to back out. But who is most vulnerable to climate change in the United States? Are there particular communities or areas that are particularly vulnerable to that sort of thing?
So I think, unfortunately, what it shows is that vulnerability very closely ties with poverty. And I think we've seen that with the coronavirus pandemic. Why is it that all the essential workers that we've had are on minimum wage when many of us are comfortably at home, you know, living out the pandemic in relative ease? And yeah, you know, it's had its challenges. I have 5 children at home. I'm a JP2 Catholic, not an ultra liberal, as some may think. But to come back to that question of vulnerability, unfortunately ties in with socioeconomic status, but also different areas of the country. We're relatively protected here, but if you live on the coasts and you see these hurricanes coming, and if you live in a house that is not very resistant, you are vulnerable. If you live in fire-prone areas, in drought areas. And I think some of the things that Sister Cheryl talked about, the different communities, people living close, something that I know more about is air pollution. People end up living close to polluted sites, and there's this question of environmental justice there. So.
Yeah, just speak to, as I was prepping for this event, I just wanted to share a stat with you, which I probably should have included in our Dropbox, but I did not. So here in St. Louis, there is, we have the Westlake Landfill, which there have been several different, there's a documentary called Atomic Homefront on the Westlake Landfill, and I won't go into all the details here, but just to say that it is it's a serious environmental hazard that's in our community. And it is also, the landfill is in the same zip code that has one of the highest COVID infection rates. So you see a connection right there between the pandemic that we're in right now and a continuing environmental issue that's been going on in our region and well documented for a while. I'm going to answer, there were several questions in the question bank, but also beforehand. There were several questions about what the Archdiocese is doing around care for creation. And I would say, first of all, look around. This is one of the things we're doing. What's going on right here has been a product of about a year of intentional listening So it was last fall I started. I'll share a story with you all that my role is with the Interfaith Office for the Archdiocese of St. Louis. So one of the things that I do in that capacity, I act as an ambassador between the Catholic community and non-Catholic communities. So last summer, before the COVID, I was in Tower Grove Park at the Festival of Nations, and I was at a table in the World Religions tent, which is hosted by the Interfaith Partnership of St. Louis. I was staffing the Catholic table, and right next to me was the Society of Ancient Druids. And there's not a lot that someone from the Society of Ancient Druids and a Roman Catholic have in common. However, one of the things that we started talking about was the sanctity of the earth, the care for the earth. And at that point, it planted this seed in me. There is a real connection between working with people of different faith communities and as Catholics, where we can really work together in what we like to call a dialogue of deeds, to both care for the earth and grow our community connections, or as the Apostle Paul says, to keep good relations among the nations in 1 Peter. So anyways, that's to say that on an archdiocesan level, we're working with our different ecumenical partners to find a path forward. That is, we're still, I wouldn't say we're at a stage where we're ready to make commitments or large goals, but just to say that we are in a committed listening process with our parishes, with our religious communities, with our academic communities about where we want to go next. And sort of echoing our Archbishop, that we want to make the season of creation and all the work that comes out of it a truly ecumenical affair. Okay, so we'll go into our next question, which I'm going to pitch to Reverend Burton. There are some opinions out there. There are some senses out there that climate change is not something that is so much a scientific enterprise, but it's coming from a particular affiliation or something else that would cause us to believe it or pursue care for our common home. And Reverend Burton, could you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, and it's sad that this topic has been politicized. In some ways, it's very obvious. I'll give you a little story. Before I was, suited up and booted up pastor, I was a church maintenance man at a large church in South County. And over 14 years, I noticed that the geese stopped migrating. They just stayed here. And working outside every day, I noticed other things. I noticed that many of the birds would just weather the winter near the river in the bushes. We also noticed that armadillos, which you would not see unless you went down to Oklahoma, regularly are part of now the habitat, the wildlife of Missouri. And so these are just some natural signs. And I would just say this theologically, sometimes I guess I'm a little bit stumped as to why folks would not understand when we know that the Word of God says that the world, sin has tainted the world, and sin has tainted the minds of humanity. So it shouldn't be a stretch to think that in the fallen state, people would misuse God's creation that's been going on. And so all that this climate change and the reaction to it is people outside the church, outside the faith, are uniting with people of faith, saying we all want to protect and preserve this planet because, it's bipartisan, it's ecumenical to breathe water, it's bipartisan, it's ecumenical to want clean air. And so, I think I'm very grateful to be a part of this panel. I'm very grateful, especially for Dr. DeFoy's reporting and Grace's zeal and the thing that she said, look at other sides of the opinion, look at other resources and just consider. If you think theologically, if the world is tainted, then it should not be a stretch to think, wow, people have misused things. And so the common good that we're seeking is that folks would work to make the world better. And I'll end with this. I'll end with two quick things. I'm going to end. Dr. DeFoy had a cartoon at the end of his presentation where the person says, hey, so what if if it's not correct, all we've done is made the world a better place. And is that such a problem? No. And then the other thing I'll say is this, I'll make it very quick. One of my members was one of the former governors. He was his home health worker, and the former governor's passed. The former governor's father passed, and I will travel down to DeSoto, Missouri, along with him. And his father was the mayor of DeSoto. And he was the mayor when the Clean Air and Water Act was passed. And the DeSoto River, in which was once beautiful, was a complete mess. And so the mayor used the Clean Air and Water Act to clean up the DeSoto River. And so now the DeSoto River is anyone can use it, and it's not a toxic place. So, what's wrong with that? That's a model. And that blessed everybody in DeSoto, Missouri.
Thank you.
Can I hop in and say something?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
Please. I just want to stress how important it is as a society that we, coming from different areas and ideas and politics, that we can come together and understand, like Reverend Burton says, everybody wants clean air, everybody wants clean water, and that's a human right. And when we can start to value people over profits as a society, there's so much creativity, there's so many creative solutions out there to make sure that we can still live our lives. We just have to really raise our voices to our pastors, the Archbishop, our legislators, to reach out to them and let them know that this is what we care about. This is what's important.
Okay, we're coming close to the end of our time. There is one more thing I wanted to touch on that's been asked by a few people again beforehand. Is there is often a perceived tension between faith and science. And I just want to invite Dr. DeFoy to speak a little bit about how your faith and science coexist together, how they work together in your work, just to speak to that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a time when all the main scientists were Catholics. And I think it's good to remember the terrible damage that the Galileo affair did to those relationships, the terrible witness that it's very important for us as Christians to be a witness to the faith. There are some harsh words in the gospel about if you scandalize one of these little ones. There's also some beautiful words in the Gospel of John that the truth will set you free. And so we need to seek out the truth. And I think that is totally applicable both in science and in religion, that religion frees us up to look for the truth, and we need not be afraid of the truth. The truth will, in fact, set us free. So I think religion helps us. There are a lot of religious scientists, a lot more than people think. They help us to admire beauty, to look at the earth, to come to things with an open mind. And both of them require discipline too. I think that's something else maybe to say between science and religion. It's hard to really seek understanding. There's a long tradition in the faith, in the church, of faith seeking understanding. I believe that I may understand. I understand that I may believe. That's a two-way street there that goes together. So they're not overlapping, but they're not unconnected. I think they're related and they can work together. And I really, that's why I wanted to have that that picture of the three popes, and going much further back than that. The church, different people, we speak with different voices, we have different interests, we do all these things, but I think there is room for people's passion in the church. And so Thanks.
Yeah, I'll say my wife is a microbiologist, did her PhD at WashU, and so we sit down, a theologian and a scientist at the dinner table every night, and we sometimes get carried away and miss our bedtime, but it's good work, and it's an important dialogue that happens, and it is often portrayed as contentious, but it really can be a loving exchange, which it is in my marriage and in my family. So we're coming to the end of our time. I want to give each of our panelists just give us a 10-second takeaway that you want our audience to bring with them as they go away this evening. And we'll start with Reverend Burton.
Work together.
Okay. Pam. You're muted, Pam.
I love this earth, and I just want everybody else to love it too.
Jamie.
Use your voice, be an advocate, and don't be afraid to take the first step.
Sister Cheryl.
All is gift. Look for the beauty and find God in creation.
Grace.
Collaborate, educate, and act.
Dr. DeFoy.
The truth will set you free, and everything is connected.
Okay, and myself, I am an Eastern Christian. I come from a Byzantine community, so my takeaway from you all is the prayer that dogs me every day, that I invite you to also pray with me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And let that be a prayer that guides us in our listening, in our caring for one another, and in caring for the earth. Thank you all so much for your time. I will be in touch with you all by email with some follow-up resources. And thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you. And thank you to our attendees for giving us questions and for being a part of this. Again, I'm going to end the meeting, and there will be an exit survey just to let us know how this evening went for you. Let us know if this is something you would like to do again. Is this something you would like to do in your place of worship? Is this something you would like to do in your high school? Are there resources that the Archdiocese can do, or that some of our ecumenical partners can develop together to help you as we go forward together? That is our hope, that we can provide those. Like I said before, we are still in a listening process. We have to act with our community, and that's you. So please share with us your thoughts and feelings. Thank you so much, and God bless. Have a good evening.